All right, so today we are going to watch Sam Seder respond directly to the TYT and a Kasparian controversy and a couple things before this clip starts here. First thing is trigger warning. He takes this response comes in after a listener calls in and they share a very personal story, talks about suicide, talks about some very personal, deep stuff. So trigger warning number one. Number two, the clip is sped up just for time purposes because he takes the call, he listens to the person's story, and then he gets into the response, and the response is a little lengthy. So if they're talking a little fast, it is because I sped it up. That is just for time purposes, and this is also just straight from the fun half. This is the last call that they took on today, July 10th.
All right, the final call of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, we had limited calls. Tomorrow, of course, is Tuesday News Day, and we're wide open, right, Bradley? We may even take calls. I don't know. Calling from a 303 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Cody. I'm calling from Denver.
Again.
Cody from Denver. What's on your mind?
Hey, this one, I'll try not to get emotional here. We just passed the 4-year anniversary of the loss of a friend in the Colorado comedy community. Some content warnings. It was a trans woman, and the way we lost her was a little dark. I think you guys know what I mean. But I really wanted to talk about the impact that the transphobic rhetoric has kind of on a personal level, because kind of just going back and reminiscing and looking through social media posts that this person made in their last month, you can really kind of start to see the effect of a lot of that rhetoric on their mental state that led up to it. Now, this was like before Matt Walsh's "What's a Woman" and stuff like that, but there was still a lot of horrible rhetoric going out. And so one of the things that I had seen that they had posted in their last month was a rant, and I kind of wanted to share it a little bit. She said, "If you feel transgender people are often opinionated and militant in their beliefs, it's true because we have to defend our existence constantly. When I first transitioned, I was the type to live and let live. Life goes on. I'm still that way. I don't actively attack people with and about who I am and why I demand a place. I love talking about it in my comedy because there's a lot that needs to be said, and it's hilarious too." And she was a very funny comic, very fun person to be around. And then she says, "But then I get the random messages. You know, you're an effed up gay dude. Have you ever heard Joe Rogan's podcast? Here's a link to Ben Shapiro. What do you say to his views?"
And I'm not going to interrupt here because I hate to interrupt this guy's story, but keep in mind that he said they just passed the 4-year anniversary of this individual's passing. So 4 years.
Then I hear conversations
keep that
in
in
public.
mind.
A dude with an effed up penis. You're pretty passable. Then I'm approached by people in public, often after sets. Did you know you're just sick? You should be in a hospital. You have an acute mental illness. I never asked for people to send me these links or videos. I never asked to have the conversations. They're coming up to me and initiating it. Now, when I finally talk back or do a post like this, I'm the one instigating. I'm defending my existence every day from random people. People get defensive if they have to be defensive a majority of the time, is what she said. And it was met with a lot of support from our community. Now, what she's talking about there is definitely instances of I think, people that are very malicious in their transphobia, which is a huge problem. Now, about a week after that, she kind of shared the other side of transphobia within her family, where you get these folks, they watch Tucker or Shapiro or Rogan or whatever, and they're convinced that if you love your trans child, you'll convince them that they're not trans. So she had shared a screenshot from what her mom had sent her, and she said, "I love you so much I would die for you, but you aren't a woman, and what you're doing isn't right. Read Romans 1. Homosexuality is a sin. You may not want to talk to me anymore, and God made you a man for some reason, and he never makes mistakes. I love you and don't want to lose you, but I'm hurting and angry and worried, and I think what you're doing is out of anger, depression, and is self-mutilation." So in this post, she said, I'm not doing okay right now. So again, huge outpouring of folks being supportive in that, supporting her among our friend groups. Now, we had a scary day a couple weeks after that where she'd gone missing, and ultimately we never get to see her again. But it gets more frustrating because after she passed, we found the eulogy, the obituary that her parents had put in. This was up in Laramie, Wyoming. Really great history of being supportive of LGBTQ people there.
Right.
But they, in the obituary, they misgendered her. They used her dead name. And you really see that if you lose your child and that's not enough for you to realize, you know, that you need to be kinder and rethink things, and the whole reason that they ended up leaving this world, you're still going to double down on it, was pretty awful. So we saw this in our community, and we made sure that our local magazine, Westward, here in Denver, wrote a proper obituary that really actually gave credit, properly gendered her, and celebrated her life in a way that I guess our folks weren't willing to. But all this stuff being said, this is where, like, when folks see us being activists to try to help trans people, LGBTQ communities and whatnot, you know, I'll constantly hear like, oh, you guys are just a bunch of woke social justice warriors and you're just virtue signaling and looking for clout. And it's like, dude, I just miss my friend. I'm never going to see my friend again. And it's because, you know, you're dumb. I identify as a whatever, you know, meme that they have to see every day. And it just, anybody listening that is trans, like, no, there's a lot of love and support for you when you have to sift through all the bullshit out there that's dehumanizing you. But we care about you, you know?
Yep. And, you know, I can imagine it's also like times like this too, where it feels like it's never, ever going to get better. And I don't know that we're not going to go through a period of time where it doesn't get a little bit worse. But, you know, I think hopefully, and I don't think it's being too Pollyannish to assume that it is just it is a matter of time. And you know, it's hard to say that to people who are living through the pain that is exerted by this era and by people around at this time. Is what's the value of their life, or the pain becomes too hard to live for. But on, you know, in some ways also, you know, helping people in the future. But it's really hard. I mean, it's hard to make that argument in this era. I mean, there's no doubt. But I really appreciate
Thank you for
the call.
sharing that story.
I hope you're right. All right, left is best. Have a good day.
I'm so
All
sorry.
right, thanks for the call.
Yeah.
And I just want to make a quick little note here, excuse me, of how amazing I think Majority Report is. This doesn't have anything to do with the issue at hand directly, but I just, there's other programs that take calls out lately, like David Pakman, he will take calls. I'm not saying that Majority Report is the only program that takes calls, but you don't really get a sense of realness or humanity from other, like, talk show news programs out there, like you do from Majority Report, where someone shares a deeply personal story like that. I haven't really seen that from, you know, huge, big talk shows where people call in and share personal stories like that, and that's something that I really do appreciate about Majority Report. And if you saw it there, like a couple minutes ago, Emma was squirming there when he was sharing that story, because it was hard to listen to. And Sam was also very clearly reacting to it. And it's just, I really appreciate that people feel comfortable calling into this program and sharing these very deep personal stories.
It is that whole thing of like, oh, trans people are really militant. Like, you're the one with the sudden opinions about trans athletes, you weirdo.
Exactly.
Jesus.
Exactly. I mean, it's quite obvious what's going on in our society today. And people should know that. I mean, and, you know, particularly like when particularly places where either identify as allies or should be allies. Like, none of these issues are seen in a narrow perspective. And I guess to a certain extent, I'm talking specifically about TYT. You know, a lot of stuff went down. I'm still sort of catching up on this. The last I had heard was, you know, or read was like Anna's tweet, like, I don't know, it was like 2 months ago or something, or whatever that was. And let me, you know, be clear on a couple of things. 'Cause I don't want to spend too much time on this. But there, you know, Emma obviously came from TYT. She has a different set of relationships over there. I don't really make a lot of friends in this business, in part because I'm just a standoffish person. But also part of it is that, like, when I was in comedy, there was always this story that I had read about this group of comedians in the God, I can't remember what the name of this crew of comedians was called at the time, but Alexi Sales is one of them. He wasn't even one of the better comedians in my estimation of that crew, like Rowan Atkinson and I don't know, a bunch of others like there in the late 80s. But he had this thing where he said, like, the worst thing about success is that you become friends with Phil Collins and then you can't really be honest about how bad his music is. You can't make fun of his music. And I know that's a weird thing, a weird quote to remember for over 35 years. But that has stuck with me. So when people say you're not talking about Anna or Cenk or this and that because of friendships, I can assure you that is not the case. I mean, I have nothing against Anna, but I've never been friends with her. I haven't been non-friends with her. Like, I think I've spoken to her once, maybe. I don't know, in person. For me, the issue is this. And to Sam's point there, just from my personal perspective here, I have had people in my comments saying that, addressing what Anna and Cenk have been saying, mostly Anna, is not important, or I shouldn't be covering it because it's not important, and it's not really a issue, and it's me unfairly criticizing the left or trying to piggyback off of their names for views, and I don't. That's not what I'm trying to do, and I do take issue with comments like that sometimes, like, just because it's a little frustrating to me when I try to verbalize the best I can and say it out loud as best I can, that's not what I'm attempting to do. And I do think that you can have you can disagree with people that other progressives and still say that, yeah, we're both progressives. And I made a video on this a while ago. It didn't do too well. I don't know how many views it has or it got, but I made a video where I talked about how I disagreed with something that Hassan said. The House, the U.S. House was holding hearings on Twitter, wasting everybody's time. And AOC was talking about how she felt that Twitter had the right to censor the Hunter Biden New York Post laptop story because, Twitter was a privately owned platform. And, if they want to, vet content like that, if they want to moderate content like that, then they have the right to do so. And Hassan, he felt differently about it. He thought that, no matter what it was, if it was disfavorable information, which I do believe is the exact wording that he said that, users on Twitter should be able to share it and share the story. And I made a video saying, well, I have a different take than that, but that's just a small example, and I don't think that that's an issue that is as important as what we're talking about here. That's just a small example I'm using, but I do think that you can have legitimate disagreements, and I also think that you can criticize people that are aligned with you politically, and still be in good terms, or not just be like, oh, this person's I want to cancel them, fuck them, they're terrible now, they've totally turned their whatever this, whatever that. Why what they're doing is wrong, and I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. But with this, let me just put it in contrast to why I do this and why I think everybody here does this. We do this here because of the politics first. And then, I don't know what the percentage is, but I realize we have to be entertaining, and I like being entertaining, and it's fun in that regard, and this and that, and you can't be and I don't even have the mental capacity to just be doing 3 hours of dry interviews. But the point is that what dictates what we do here, and I remember years and years ago, I would get arguments with a caller, I shouldn't refer to what we do here as propaganda. Propaganda to me has always been a value neutral term. It is when you have an ideology or a set of issues that you're promoting or whatever it is, you are putting out content in it with an eye to that. I think you could argue that in some way, all media is propagandistic in the sense that someone's making an editorial decision. Even what they deem to be newsworthy is making an editorial decision. And this is something I've said before, but propaganda, I think the word in our culture and our language automatically has this negative connotation to it, like if you say it in a conversation or you see it written somewhere. But excuse me, I do think that propaganda can be used for good. I do think propaganda can be a good thing. the point being is that we are living in an era right now, which is undeniable, where the right wing, there's been plenty of reporting about this. The Republican Party, the right wing, the conservative movement, all those things, there's not a lot of daylight between any of those things, specifically was shopping around for something to motivate its fundamentalist base. And fall in the wake of gay marriage, not causing typhoons and dogs and cats falling from the sky, they came upon transphobia. And the way that it ended up playing out was in the context of it dovetailed with some schooling issues and CRT and keeping people home from school and this and that, which not to imply that this is something that's incredibly novel, but in terms of its growth, it is quite clear what's going on here. There's a concerted effort to do this. You do not spend $50 million in a campaign in Michigan on trans issues unless there is a concerted effort to do that. So that's one reality that lives, that exists right there.
Yep.
And the other reality may be that in your mind, you have an issue with what goes on in women's sports. I'm just going to stipulate that. I'm just going to say that's sincere, that you really care about women's sports. Okay. And you have some really thoughtful or even non-thoughtful ideas about what should happen in women's sports. If you do what we do here, which is what is going to help not immiserate a specific group of people, or what is going to mitigate doing that, or how do we protect those people? Even if you believe deep down, like I feel very strongly about, women's sports,
right?
Which, people can be a little skeptical of that case in some instances, but regardless, I'm sure there's something. It is incumbent upon you, you don't have to speak about it, because it is contributing to an environment that is wreaking violence on a group of people in our society who have very little political or material protection. And that's just the reality of it.
And this is something that I've been saying in my videos covering Anna and Cenk's positions on this specific trans issue, which is, trans athletes in sports. Cenk likes to keep bringing up the fact that, it's an issue that, it doesn't do well in the polls. The polling numbers are low, not a whole lot of Americans support it. And I don't understand how that is one of the go-to or baseline arguments for progressive issues. Because if that's the go-to, which is, it's not good in polling, then I don't know where we would be as a country today. If progressives based their movements on just only stuff that did really well in the polls.
There is no excuse. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm not going to shut up about my opinions. It is incumbent upon you, and it's acutely problematic if this is the biggest online left of center outlet that exists.
Yeah. And I will say that if you do choose to speak about it, which I think I have in particular, I will go further and say I think it's incumbent upon you, if you are a part of the left, to be militant in support of trans activists, because I think the excuse that's given is that this is a wedge issue, and not conceding the point that somebody might have a different muscle structure if they're a trans person, blah, 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 is helping the right. I don't agree with that at all, actually. I think conceding the framing is much more helpful to the right than being an advocate. I think being an advocate, you're providing a counter narrative for a wedge issue that is being used cynically by the right, not being brought up by the leftist activists or the trans activists. They're responding to it with protection. It's inverted, the focus.
But even that, first off, we can see data. We can see data, and we know how this plays in elections.
We saw it in this last midterms. Yeah.
Now, you can show me a poll that says people don't want, trans women to play in women's sports, but I can also show you a poll that 75% of people want gun control. If you want to come and say that this is an electoral issue, come with data.
I can show you a poll that MLK had a 25% approval rating at the time of his death. I mean, we can't just be fighting for what's popular in the moment, because then you're saying that you can't change the framing around that.
But even if you're saying it's popular in the moment, it's not resonating from an electoral standpoint. That's why I think that is
granted too
bullshit.
Much to the anti-trans
Exactly.
Right.
I think that is a bullshit excuse.
They aren't the post.
Because you would lead with that. Okay. As much as we heard, like, it's one thing to say, like, I don't think, defund the police is the most artful slogan there is. But to harp on it, you're just doing the work of what it turned out to be the corporate Democrats who wanted an excuse for why they were going to lose their elections, as opposed to the reality of the whole thing.
In fact, that does help corporate Democrats. It's a good point.
And it's very hard for me to believe. Well, let me put it this way. It's incumbent upon people who do what we do to be able to make that assessment. And that is being I have no idea what's going on over there. I'm not in contact with anybody over there. And, my speculation and conjecture is no more informed, probably less so, than, people in this audience. But in terms of what I think is a responsibility and where a bar lies, while we're at it, in terms of the affirmative action thing, if anybody, including Jank, thinks that, black people are going to get more respect now in colleges because there's no affirmative action, you're insane. That's absurd.
Yeah. I mean, to put it as succinctly as possible, there's a finite number of things that we can focus on. Matt says that quite a bit. And I think it's incredibly important in our industry to focus on the things that are going to make sure that there are as much protections as humanly possible for trans people, for marginalized communities in this country. And I believe that focusing on the language of activists that are on the margins and that are incredibly anecdotal is, in fact, serving a far-right agenda.
100%.
Yeah.
And it is really problematic to have the biggest center of left. I don't know where you want to put them or where they would put themselves on some type of spectrum, whatever.
Progressives. Home of Progressives is the title.
I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah. And it's not just the two of them that work there, I want to say, right? Like, there are a lot of great people that work in TYT. Yeah. A lot of great people who are leftists and progressives that I don't think want to be associated with this. Right.
I mean, but without even getting into the internal politics there, that's for people to suss out themselves. I have always had both a tremendous amount of respect for people who say, I don't like this work environment and I'm going to do whatever I can to reverse it. And if part of that means I'm going to quit this job and I'm going to do it in a public way, I mean, we've begged people to do that during the course of the Iraq War and whatnot. Certainly there was a ton of that, with I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. I also understand, because of the nature of the society we live in, that there may be people there who are whatever it is, the job that I do here is not terribly easily replicated somewhere else. And this is a time of contraction with these things. And, I've got college loans because I just, bought a house or I've got a car payment or whatever it is. I also, have a tremendous amount of sympathy and understanding for people in that situation. The bottom line is there are, prominent voices that run that network or that project out that network. And it is wrong of them to be playing nuance. And I'm trying to be charitable here, playing nuance with an issue that is so clearly drummed up to inflict pain on people. They're hoping for electoral gain. I don't think they'll necessarily get the electoral gain, although it strengthens, if I'm in a red state and I can pass a law, I'm going to stay in office. It's not necessarily going to, impact Joe Biden's reelection. It's not even going to impact in the purple districts. I think it cuts against them in the purple districts.
And standing up for trans rights might get young Gen Z people out more than turning small people on the margins to vote Democrat.
Again, this is not a data first argument that people are making. And all the morons who've been making a data first argument, they had to end up reversing themselves anyways on a lot of this stuff. Yeah. I mean, so I only acknowledge it because I want to say that I think that is a red herring and a bullshit excuse.
And if leftist critique causes you to change your worldview or adjust your approach that drastically, that is definitionally reactionary.
Well, I heard this from Dave Rubin on how mean leftists were and that they left him. And listen, if you're doing any type of show like this, you're going to hate everybody. Not that I should hate. I don't think there's any value in everybody hating you or not. Whatever.
It means you're doing something right.
You're going to hate everybody because people are going to be rude and think that they're, and for it to alter your perspective and your analysis as to who is marginalized, who is in danger, what's going to provide the greatest amount of relief, help, support, material gain for the greatest amount of people, then you should be in a different business to begin with. But also, give me an effing break. There is no doubt in my mind that if we were sitting here and we're doing a right-wing show, I wouldn't be considered an asshole, and I would get invited on places, and I would be going and hanging out and skateboarding and eating sushi and this and that, like the warm embrace of these people.
And excuse me, that's something that I also think is at least something I feel like an important distinction when it comes to talking about these types of issues. Kind of what Sam is talking about here. I think Hassan said it best. I don't remember when he said this, but he said that, you know, when it comes to speaking about or, you know, even debating people on these issues, he doesn't think that, you know, civility is important. And I 100% agree with that. You know, I think that when it comes to talking about stuff like this, that we need to try to get our point across, however we can, and whether you know, that is whatever tactics that we need to use, or whatever tactics people feel comfortable using to get their point across. You know, I don't think that you know, being nice or you know, being polite, or you know, speaking in a nice way, or you know, exposing people on the other side for, you know, how flawed or stupid or just downright ridiculous their arguments or positions are, you know, and making fun of them for them. You know, I don't think that stuff is, you know, I don't think that stuff works against you when you're trying to get your point across when it comes to these important issues.
Like, yeah. Again, what is that? Mr. Death? Was it Mr. Death? The Errol Morris
documentary.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Mr. Beast.
No, Mr. Death. This is a guy who was a lonely guy who was like a consultant for states when they would kill people with capital punishment. And somebody, you know, some Holocaust deniers, he had said something like the effect of like, oh, I find it hard to believe they could have used Zyklon B. And he became completely embraced by the Holocaust denying Nazi community, and became like, just was living it up.
Yeah.
They were so much nicer to him.
They stayed
than
for
everybody
sushi.
else.
He stayed for sushi and bubble tea.
Stayed for sushi and bubble tea. And that is not a measure of the way you look at humanity. And that should not be a dictate as to what you express publicly. If you've got a job where you are public facing, it is incumbent upon you to think about the implications of your words.
And that, again, this is something that I was really focusing on in my last video that I made, covering Anna Kasparian, where she retweeted Jesse Signal, Destiny, and I don't know if it was Adam or Stitch from the Adam and Stitch show. Either or, it doesn't matter. Either one is terrible. It's just, when you have a platform, when you are someone that has a platform as large as Anna Kasparian, when you have as many people that look at your profiles where you post publicly, when you are someone as big as Anna Kasparian, you need to keep in mind, you need to know that when you post something on your platform for everybody to see, that is you in some either indirect or direct way, unless you are, you know, obviously, unless like you're responding to somebody, you know, when you're retweeting somebody, that is in a way, you know, endorsing what they're saying. So when Anna Kasparian retweets, someone like Destiny, where he posts a tweet where he says, well, you know, Anna Kasparian, you know, she's been proven right by you know, people criticizing her that are on the left, and you know, Jesse Signal, who's a known transphobe, tweets something similar, and she retweets it, and same goes for you know, Stitcher Adam, whoever it was, I can't remember. It's just when you start doing things like that, when you start to get into that territory, much like Sam said, you know, it's it can really show. It can really show where you personally stand on the issue. And again, when you are fighting for these progressive issues, your opinion doesn't always really matter. You don't always need to share your opinion. This is, you know, this is already stuff that they said in the video. But again, you don't always need to share exactly what you think about the issue. And then again, you know, it's like Jenk says, it doesn't do well in the polls. Okay, again, those are polls. That does not. Polls can be helpful sometimes, but again, those are polls. That doesn't really matter. That's asking, again, people's opinions on the matter. Okay, That's exactly what polls are. But this was a lot longer than I wanted it to be. That's going to be it for the video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, press that little bell, turn on all notifications so you guys never miss an upload.